Hi, watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. Welcome to this special show. This is a joint program between NewsX and the Business World, and an endeavor to get the best voices from the world of business, shed some light on the state of affairs in the economy and the world of business as well. Well, the economy, as you know, is staring down the barrel. Unemployment, debt, and all. The world is hard under a pandemic, which has made the demand and supply chain a very great reality, or something which the government has to contend. And the reality is that the government has to deal with it alone, and the stimulus package was perhaps a step in that direction. But is this step leading us to a greener pasture, or is it going to make us slip into an economic growth oblivion? Well, we're going to discuss this with our esteemed panelists on the show. Let me welcome them one by one. Atul Hegde, co-founder of Filmmaker Ventures. Atul, pleasure to have you on our show. Vikram Lindsay, CEO of Helicon Consulting, is also with us on the panel. Vikram, pleasure to have you. Vivek Bhargav, CEO, Dan Performance Group. Ramesh Jude Thomas, President and CKO, Equitor Value Advisory Private Limited. Vani Gupta Dandia, founder Cherry Peach Plum Growth Partners. Vani, pleasure to have you over here. And Amit Kharbanda, founder of MyBox, is also with us on the program. And Saurabh Agarwal, partner, Tax and Regulatory Services, Ernst & Young, is also with us on this special program. And last but by no means the least, Mr. Ajay Rajbir, Director of File Square, and of course, Anurag Batra, Editor-in-Chief of Business World. Well, in fact, let me start with Mr. Atul Hegde. Mr. Hegde, if you can hear me. Okay, let's get one thing out of the way first. What was your response to the stimulus package? Did you think there were any misses? You know, when you were listening to that speech, that 4-day process carried on by Nirmala Sitharaman, the Honorable Finance Minister, did you think, okay, this is something that they should have focused on, this is something that they have done right, and this is perhaps something which is going to receive a lot of flack? What was going in your head when she was reading out that plan?
Okay, Vineet. So two things. While the stimulus was announced, right, it obviously happened across many days. So it was not that you saw something for an hour and then you reacted to it. So you had time enough to digest what was coming in, and then you knew what was coming in the next day, what sectors were going to get addressed. I think everywhere there were gaps, everywhere there were good news. I think it was a mixed bag. The real challenge for the industry is to really see that what is it that will work for them, right? It's not one solution that fits for everybody. I was looking at it more from startups, from the investment environment, what is there in for there, the MSMEs. So a lot of things were announced from that perspective. If you ask me from a broad sector point of view, I think it was a hit and miss. There was some hits, there were lots of misses, but that's going to be the reality with any package. You're never going to have enough resources to come with a magic wand and say that, here guys, everything is not going to be all right, right? I think the real challenge is to see what is it that's going to work, what is specific for our industries, and really see that can we actually leverage that. So for me, that was really the crux of what happened across those 2 days.
Okay, Vikram Lindsay, coming to
and Atul, Atul, I want to ask you specifically. You fund startups. You put money in about 20 startups over the last 3 years. Now, one of the concerns is that the startups don't have enough money to sustain, and their revenues have been hit. They were raising capital, which the capital flow has stopped. So how will startups survive? What's your view on the package addressing the needs in terms of capital of startups?
So Anurag, I'll tell you one thing that's happening, right? Everybody is focusing on the quantum of the package. Especially for startups, I think more than the quantum, the speed of delivery of the package is equally important. As they say that, justice delayed is justice denied, the same with the stimulus package. If it is delayed, it's as good as being denied. I think there were things in that for things like which might not be direct stimulus, but for example, IT returns, right? In fact, today, coincidentally, some of our companies have actually got their IT returns back. Now, that's a big boost for them when they're surviving and fighting for cash. So I think the speed is equally important. We are seeing some of it actually on ground. I hope the MSME loans is much easier. It sounded very simple. We've yet to hear from the bank saying how they're going to implement it. But yes, for startups, battle, One is to really survive, on the cash that they have. And the other, which is again welcome, I would say, for startups, is the commitment the government made that in 45 days, they're going to clear all dues that they have. A lot of startups are going to benefit. So again, I want to emphasize speed is as important as the quantum of the stimulus, especially from the startup.
Fantastic, Atul. Fantastic. Speed is key. Execution is key. Speed is key.
Okay, Vikram Limsey, your reactions to the stimulus package, and do you think that there was extremely, heavy on, the benefit of the MSMEs? After all, they do employ over about 10 crore people in the country, and unemployment is already something which the government was dealing with. They received some criticism even before the coronavirus hit the world. There were movements in the corridors and echelons of power that unemployment is something which has to be taken care of. And do you think that was the reason why MSMEs got the attention that they did?
Vineet, let me answer this in two parts. The first one is, I think, there could be naysayers, but in such a large interdependent economy, I think, it's very difficult to deliver a package. Now, I think if you really look at it in detail, what's happened, the poor want subsistence, the middle class wants job security, the agriculturist wants a little bit of a price support, the higher industry wants, let's say, something like a policy support, the middle industry wants a little bit of protection, the small industry wants liquidity. So each has its own broad requirement. And I think, you can't be detailed in such a package, but what the government has tried to do is that for every aspect of our macroeconomic ecosystems, try to do something about it, from liquidity to policy initiatives to agriculture reforms to everything. Talking about MSME, yes, I think I'm personally very happy because apart from a lot of our clients, I also happen to be MSME entrepreneur. What actually happens is that one of the key things the MSME looks at is liquidity in kind of times like this. So the government has provided a lot of liquidity because after all, the MSME takes care of a large amount of working population, either unorganized or unorganized. So it's evident and rightly so that the MSME has been given that much more fillip by the finance minister. So in that sense, to answer your question, yes, right. It has a little bit more weightage on that, but rightly so.
Okay. Mr. Bhargav, if you can hear me. I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm going to start with a quote. A famous comedian, a once famous comedian, Bill Cosby, said that, I don't know the secret to success, but the secret to failure is trying to please everyone. Was this stimulus intended to please everyone? And if not, then what were the misses?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think when you try to please everyone, then you please no one. So there's this movie that I remember where somebody said there's $1 billion lottery, but I want everybody to win. So everybody got $1. So nobody's happy. So I think the key out here is that if I just look at this package, right, first of all, it's focused not on the supply side of things. But if you ask me, I represent the advertising industry. And I feel that the advertising media industry is definitely a driver of demand. Generally, when $100 of goods are sold, $1 is spent on advertising. The multiplier from advertising in media, we all represent the industry, but there isn't much that has been done for the advertising industry. If you just take today, if you take most of our costs are fixed with people cost. I think simple things like, we've been said that can we amortize advertising expenses? A startup who's spending some monies or a company who's investing in advertising, he's going to get the benefit of it over the next 3 to 5 years and will definitely stimulate the demand. So can we do something in that direction? If you just take, TDS refunds is something that we were looking at, or we were looking at that if you invest $100 or 100 rupees in advertising, can it be treated as $200 when you're so Ashish from Denso has been talking about this, where can we look at that reducing our profit, but that's an investment companies need to make. But I think it's very, very important that when we look at monies, there has to be some strategy in how this money is going to get dispersed, or even the benefit, right? I was talking earlier and Anurag mentioned that 15,000 crores has been given to digital Vidya. But let's assume that we would go to Harvard today and say, okay, here's 1,000 crores. We want all your content to give it to us in India for free. right? Let's put it this way, that we go to Reliance, make sure the broadband with Airtel, Reliance and Vodafone coming together, the broadband for that content becomes free, and all that content is given to every single SME in the country. Then what happens is, for 1,000 crores, we can actually buy every single content out there, because these countries would love that content to be consumed by us. Because eventually that content will help us to then come and do our courses out there in Harvard. Because you do an online course, you almost want to do the actual course. So I think there is a big sort of a gap between the cup and the lip. An amount is announced, but there is no way that amount can be utilized effectively fast enough. As Atul mentioned, right? Sort of justice delayed is, justice denied. So a lot of this, by the time the impact of some of the stimulus will come, will take a few years. By that time, it's too late. So we need things to be done today. And there has to be a very clear plan of action that in the next 1 week, this will happen, 2 weeks, it will happen, 1 month, this will happen. So every startup, I've invested in 14 companies. I'm on the chair of the IMAI startup board. I'm on the chair, but I feel that, what are the specific things a startup is going to get over the next 1, 3, 6 months or 1 year period? It's still confusing. The more I read the stimulus, the more confused I get what exactly is going to come to an investor like me, what's going to come to a startup, what is going to come to the advertising industry. It's important that even if we try to please everyone, there should be very specific that this is what we're trying to do for this person, and this is how he's going to get the benefit we are going to pass on to him. I feel that clarity, at least in my personal case, I'm still not very clear on that as yet.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense actually. And Ramesh Thomas, if you can hear me, Mr. Ramesh Thomas, if you can hear me, I can't hear you.
I was muted. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, Ramesh, what do you think? This is a very ambivalent point. On one hand, there's this urgency which is required by the economy, by the people of this country. On the other hand, you have this stimulus package, which in many ways is not that emergent. It's not that urgent as well. If you have to, avail those money for those benefits, there is a process. There are middlemen, there are banks, and that takes time. And at the same time, you want people to feel better about the government's stimulus package as well. And you couple that with the TDS refund as well, which is something that the government wants to expedite. That is perhaps something which is urgently being done, but that is not the need of the hour. The need of the hour is money in the hands of people. You think through this endeavor by the government, this stimulus package, that particular need has been facilitated?
So can I pull back a little bit? Because dealing with the details in a situation like this is very, very difficult. You just break it up into two parts at a macro level, if I'm allowed to do that. Sure. I'll treat this as survival and revival. I just make some opening comments and maybe we can deal with it in detail a little later. So let's talk about the survival part first. Okay? So the last big global crisis, actually, we lost 75 million people, and almost everything got obliterated by way of economy, even societal structures, relationship with other countries. Everything got obliterated. And so, if somebody had spoken about a survival package at that point of time, I think it would have been a laugh. So what's going to happen even now? The government, I'm not trying to hold a candle for anybody, but whatever the government decides, whatever package it gives, it's going to leave a lot of people out. And let's be very clear about it. That's a fact. So therefore, when you say no one's going to be happy, I think it's an understatement. So we can always find fault with it. In a situation like this, in a crisis of these dimensions, there is going to be huge collateral damage. And that's a fact. Therefore, if you're going to talk about survival, I think it's only going to be the survival of the fittest, literally. I'm sorry to use a cliche, but there will be damage and there will be non-survivors. I'll take two examples. On the back of the Second World War, which is where I want to pivot into the revival part. Two countries that built their economies after obliteration and became the second and third largest economies in the world were Germany and Japan, or Japan and Germany in that order. They came from complete obliteration because they found strengths within themselves to try and build a new economy, a new society on the back of the ruins. And that's what we'll have to look at. Will everyone be able to manage that? Well, the harsh reality is no. there will be many people who won't survive. There will be many businesses who don't survive. I have it on authority that there are over 100,000 SMEs who don't have the cash for more than 3 months. Where are they going to go? That's a reality. Can you save all of them? Probably not. And we got to live with that. It's a harsh reality. But those who will survive will build completely new structures on the back of that. Let me just move for 1 minute to the revival part. The Prime Minister spoke about self-reliance, and he spoke about vocal on local. Now, what I would like to ask is, when you're talking about such things, they need very specific stimulus. How are you going to make sure that self-reliance is going to become a reality? AATMANIRBHAR cannot just be a clarion call. It needs to be backed by a strategic plan of action. And there are opportunities for India. For example, a country like Japan has spoken about a $220 billion package to disengage from China in all economic relationships. Where are we in terms of a strategy to actually take some capital out of that opportunity? And we are well positioned to do it. Do we have a strategy? Do we have a framework? Do we have an investment for that? Do we have policy for that? I think these are the things that we need to think about, but we definitely think about it in two parts. I don't think we can mix up the two. One is survival, where there are going to be very harsh realities. We need to live with that. One is revival, where the strongest, the fittest are going to survive, but it needs very clear strategy at the top.
Okay. All right. Anurag, any thoughts by you at this point?
I mean, they're making right time. I think I just want to ask Ramesh one specific question. You know, when you talk of, Vivek talked about how advertising is a demand creator. And, you know, at the end of the day, commerce and demand will create that money cycle in the economy. You can produce goods, products, services. If you don't create demand, you don't create offtake, nothing will happen. And, you know, the media advertising sector is a dependent sector. How the economy does reflects in how that sector does. But the government has not incentivized, you know, let's say, creation of demand measures. You know, it has not. What do you have to say about that? I mean, look at retailers. Retailing creates demand, you know, or at least fulfills demand, even if, let's say, it doesn't create demand. It definitely. Now, there's not much for retailers. If retailers go out of business, we'll end up damaging the demands, you know, fulfillment and demand side totally. So what do you have to say to that?
Okay, let's say the government does nothing for us. All right, I'm going to go on record here, but I don't mind. I don't mind being heard. But the point is, there are many businesses, the media businesses, which have to produce every day, irrespective of whether they get 1 rupee or not. So, like an airline seat, it's going to expire in no time. But still, the cost of maybe printing up a newspaper every day is about 8-9 rupees. Where's that going to go? I'm saying, suppose advertisers and media people were to get together and say, let me advertise, but let me pay you on the back of some results on a daily basis. And things like newspapers can produce results every day. So I don't have to pay you upfront, but if I get people coming into the store and people can come to the store or people can do business, I'll pay you, because that paper is going to get
demand generation.
Because the paper is going to expire anyway. And if there's no revenue for you of any kind, there's no point. It's a new day tomorrow and you're going to lose more money. So why can't we do something like this?
Fair enough. Ramesh, will come back to you. Vineet, at this point, let's get Vani Gupta Dandia. Vani, you work with large set of entrepreneurs and brands. Tell us your inputs and response to the economic stimulus and your ideas on how to bring the economy back.
So, you know, having heard everybody and having seen whatever I've seen in the last few months, my overall impression is that it's possibly a little. You know, I feel that the government's announced certain measures without really fully understanding what this country is possibly all about. We are actually a country of entrepreneurs. We are a country that is largely self-employed. And if we don't get into the minds and hearts of what we call the migrant labor, we haven't got this country right. You know, our country actually survives on the back of this. This is our economy. And, you know, I think it was yesterday or was it today, I read in the papers, Chidambaram was saying that the package should have been 40 lakh crores. Nitin Gadkari was saying that the package should have been perhaps 50 lakh crores. Nitin Gadkari was himself saying that. And there was something else I saw. apparently the unemployment number in our country is already hovering around 23%.
Yeah.
I work with a number of startups, and the one common theme that I'm hearing from everybody across is how do we get business back? Everybody is worried about the demand side. Yes, the government's possibly done more on the supply side, but right now, what we desperately require, what we needed this package to address, was measures to immediately get demand revved up. We need sentiment back. We need more happiness. We need people to line up and buy things. We need demand back so that factories can start churning. The other problem also is the fact that there isn't labor to keep the factories running now. To get the labor back is also going to be a huge challenge. So whatever we do, and even if there were future announcements of any kinds of packages from the government, I think it's critical right now to focus on getting demand back.
But Vani, just as a counter, the government may not want the demand to be fully back now that people going out to restaurant, bars, going to cinema halls, traveling, because the spread needs to be contained. So maybe there are measures that will come in at some later stage. Second, I want to counter your and Ramesh's point that, at the end of the day, entrepreneurs have built their businesses with little support from the government. They've been innovative. So maybe we shouldn't look at the government. And government has done the best. At this point, let's get Saurabh Agarwal. Saurabh, the government's coffers are itself depleted. Government's revenue in the last 2 months has come down. Even if you look at 2019, the tax collection was lower than, if you look at every year, the last tax collection has been 50-60% of what the budgeted number was, right? So what do you think the government has done right, and what do you think that the government needs to do more?
See, I think from an MSME standpoint, my fellow panelists have talked about much around the MSME issue. I'll more talk from a tax perspective what government has done. Government has deferred the payment of GST for almost 2.5-3 months, which is again ensures a liquidity in the hands of all the entrepreneurs, be it a MSME, large, small, any type of entrepreneur. It ensures a liquidity in their hands. The PF contribution, wherein they have lowered down the PF contribution, that again is a welcome measure because that creates more money in the hands of the end individual, and which in turn creates some other demand, which my panelists were also talking about, that it leads to create a consumer demand in the market. I think what we have to also see that there has been a lot of policy rollouts which have happened from the government to make India as a manufacturing hub. Recently, government has introduced an incentive scheme for electronic sector as well as a scheme for electronic components. So primarily, the government wants to attract the investments into the country, and they are coming up with these schemes. Similarly, there are many other schemes which appears to be in the pipeline, like on a battery cell manufacturing. Similarly, there are other incentive schemes on auto, and similar schemes are being looked after by the government. What we have been also hearing is that government is also looking at tax holidays. That's what is reported in some of the newspapers. So I think government is trying to attract more and more investments into the country. And with the more investments, there will be more jobs. So whatever are the job losses which are happening, those job losses will be recouped by the new jobs which will get created in the market.
But Saurabh, those are little medium term, long term. What about addressing the need for capital now? What about survival? What about front loading the reforms?
So see, the important thing which the government did was that increasing your limits of loan for MSMEs by 20% without any collateral. I think that is a very welcome measure. Another thing which you have to see from a government standpoint, wherein they are saying that they'll create a fund of funds who will invest into the startup equity. But again, those fund of fund, all of these things are, you can say, a mid-run thing. Means maybe it will take 6 months to a year's time to implement it overall. But we also have to see the overall status of our economy with the tax exchequer depleting down month on month.
I started with it. I said the government has a very leeway, and I'm of the view that government has done a good job. It can certainly do more, but it's done. The government has done the best it could have done in the possible circumstances. I'm personally of that view.
Right.
So do I, Anurag. And I think the utmost thing which is important, one is consumption, but another thing which is important is that we don't miss out on the capital investments which are moving to various other countries. I have been reading that capital investments are moving to Indonesia, Vietnam, etc. We have to be competitive in the market at this stage and ensure that we attract this investment into the country.
Last but not the least, for the opening comment, we have Mr. Bad from Tiles Square. Mr. Bad, what did the government get right, and what can it do more going forward?
My reactions for the stimulus package given by the Nita, our finance minister, is only that what she has given is not given the direct benefit to the consumers. Nirmala ji has given all the benefit in the very intelligent way to all the business community, to everybody, but the benefit will not going to get passed on to the consumers in direct way. Anyway, if we increase our business, we can get the loan for the MSME and everything, but nothing is planned for the consumers in the direct accessible way. If you see, if it is done in the sector like the electric bill cutouts, like the interest rate cutouts, then it can be directly benefited, and each and every consumer has thought that it is benefiting him directly. But the packages, what he has given, it will be long-term plan, very, very long-term plan. So it's not going to affect the industry and to increase the boom the demand in the right way, right corner. And the salary, the problems which is going to be exist in the industry will not going to sort out in this way. It's a very, very hard situation. It is a fight for survival, not for revival, for the 3 months to 4 months. So
beautiful. You said it's a fight for survival and not for a fight for revival. We'll come to you for your more comment. Mr. Amit Kharbanda, the founder of MyBox is here. You make set-top boxes, you do manufacturing. You're also a large employer. What are your initial reactions to the economic stimulus package, and what do you think the government could have done better?
Thanks, Anurag. Actually, the expectation got built up the night before with the Prime Minister. You know, that speech was quite big, as always. Make in India got everybody excited. I'm part of some electronic forums and all, and we were very excited that evening. So then, you know, then the number starts looking nice and everything. Because I think everybody's kind of covered the points that I wanted to say as well. The biggest thing is we are looking at how do we survive and then we fight. So I'm putting it like few years later, we're going to call it the before Corona BC generation and a BC after. I think the world's changed in this 3 months. We should just forget and start looking at these things newly. It would have been okay if the government would have said that, you know, we don't have so much of funds. We know we've gone through an economic crisis. Now we need to manage with what we have and we do within our system. So the MSME package on day one sounded very nice. Unfortunately, we still haven't seen the papers because the banks haven't come back. So why wasn't the banks told that, you know, it has to be across the banks, do it in a week's time? So as Atul said very well that, you know, it's about timing. So if this loan does come out in few months, we are almost dead by then. Then we start looking into the details. They say, you know, the cutoffs was how bad or how well you were on 29 Feb. A lot of companies weren't affected by COVID in Feb, but they started getting affected in March. So we need to understand those factors. So it was very interesting. Then the next 3 days, we kept going back, hoping that there will be talks about revival, funding coming. Now, people have been talking about electronics being giving a lot of incentives recently, right? Most of those incentives, they made sense in February because they were being given to others to come to India in Feb. Now we are saying you got to survive also. So we requested that all the incentives you have of corporate tax being announced for new investments, why couldn't that be given for the companies who are already there? Now today, if I have a corporate tax which is lower and I have issues which I have to handle, because like in electronics, if you see, everybody sits together and manufactures. Now in social distancing, I have to spread my space. So my efficiency has gone down. I have to spend on PP equipment. I have to spend material on labor coming in. Then as Vani said, labor is available, not available, train new labor. Supposedly my labor was from the next state. I can't get them in because they need to be quarantined. When I'm going through all of those challenges, then why is it that companies who've always been in India or have always struggled or fought the battle are not being given an advantage? So today, if you come in from outside, you have a better corporate tax, you have better land rates. Why can't you just say, okay, across the country today, for next period, all of this will happen? One more important point, which Vani said, really true, is that we are entrepreneurs. I think what MSMEs wanted was, can the government pay the money they owe to everyone? I think 5 lakh crores or some numbers is being quoted as the money that government owes to MSMEs and companies across. Let's just get that in. If we have the cash, we will start churning. We will not fire people, which is obviously somewhere which we can create demand. So I think somewhere we are losing the battle by saying, okay, we'll do 25 things. We can't please everyone. The world's changed. Maybe we'll all have to think of doing the same business differently. Maybe like I said, I'm happy as a set-top box because that's the home entertainment product. So that should grow because people will watch more stuff on TV, then they'll probably go out. But then can I sell it the same way? I'll have to probably find different ways because retail is not selling. Maybe can I do something? We'll all have to think that. But most importantly is how do we survive this 3-4 months? And that can only survive if there's cash in the system.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure if we still have Anurag with us or not, but Mr. Atul Hegre, let me come back to you again, sir. The entire point of having this stimulus package was, to create a substantial liquidity presence in the market. Do you think that is something which is, extremely important in the next couple of months? And if it's delayed beyond that, then the situation, economy-wise, business-wise, is going to deteriorate even further, no matter what you do in terms of stimulus.
Liquidity is the size of the company. I think everybody is running after liquidity. That is something that we cannot wait for, right? It's already been 2.5, 3 weeks. You cannot wait for it. If there are MSME loans announced, we have to avail them. So speed is absolutely the key right now. So liquidity, number one for survival. Extremely important. So that is something which I think whatever is announced, right? Let's live with it, saying this is it. Let's assume it's a finite number and say that's what it is. But now it's really about how fast can it reach to the people that need it. I think that's extremely important. And the other point is we cannot treat this as something which is a 2-month or a 3-month issue. I think we all have to accept the fact that this is not going to go away in the next 60 days, right? It's going to be part of our life. Now, whether that's a year, 2 years, we don't know. So I think everything that the government does, they have to look at it from that lens. This is not something that I'm going to give you an injection and you're going to be okay in the next 30, 45 days. No. Right now, yes, liquidity, enhance it, but then treat it as something which is going to be here. So have a 1-year plan, have a 2-year plan.
Okay. Vikram Limsey, if you can hear me.
Atul, I'm just interpreting that the government has to continuously do things to respond to the dynamic situation and treat the next 12 months as if, even if the COVID goes away, as if there was an urgency to do both, stimuli that will generate demand, to inject liquidity, and also to do structural reforms. So continue in this mode for the next 12 months. That's what I'm getting from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Vikram, at the same time, the government is also making a pitch and a push for Atmanirbharta, self-reliance. In an atmosphere, in an economy where even your agarbattis and your saris are imported from China, how prudent it is to mix this thought with the revival and survival? Okay, I can't hear you, Vikram.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, so this Atmanirbharta, Vinay, I think, as an economy, we lost out, if you really analyze, we lost out one major step. We are an economy which moved directly from agriculture to to services, and this huge chunk of the industrial or manufacturing economy actually missed out. We missed it. We are an economy, we moved from agriculture to services. So whether prudent or not, to answer your question, it is a necessity, because quite honestly, the value that is created by the manufacturing sector, whether it be micro manufacturing sector or even the large manufacturing sectors, it's very important that an attention is given to that sector. So I think the heart is in the right place. Let's see what happens in future. But I'm more interested in the manufacturing and the Atmanirbharta at the larger sectors, which is, for example, 2 sectors which really excite me are probably defense and atomic. Now, space and defense and atomic. Now, those are sectors which are, kind of economy drivers. Look at space. I think space is a sector which probably the only sector where we have a huge competitive advantage over anybody else. I mean, and that's a sector which is protected, and that's now going to be opened out. And look at what SpaceX is doing in the US and what we are doing over here through ISRO. Imagine if space is the half of the development of the kind of West Coast or in the US, for example, was all done because of the defense sector being opened up. And we know what happened in Bay Area after that. So the manufacturer segment is hugely responsible for anything that is going to go forward to do with our economy. So I think the heart is in the right place. It is prudent, must be done, whether it happens or not. It's for the industry to take on. There are a lot of entrepreneurs there.
Okay.
Vikram, I want to know from you is auto sector. It's such a large contributor to GDP. It contributes to manufacturing. It's a large employer. What can be done to rejuvenate the auto sector? Because today on Businessworld, we had an exclusive where the Tata Motors CEO said that the current package will do nothing for the auto sector. So what specifically for the auto sector can be done?
Well, the auto sector, and I remember I have written in detail on this sector.
That's why I asked.
More media as well. Yeah, one of the things like this space, the auto sector actually, Anurag, is due for a complete change. So the old data sector with its IC and everything is gone. Now the EV is going to come in and so on and so forth. New technology is going to come in. So what probably the government needs to do is do a little bit of clustering. See, in the auto sector and even in the larger manufacturing sector, for those of us who are in that sector, clustering is very important. For example, in manufacturing, very difficult to get material manufacturers, for example. Very difficult if you have a component or a sub-assembly unit, you go running around for materials. You don't have, you go running around for tooling, you go running around for design, so it's completely disparate everywhere. Now, the old clusterings which happened, let's say in Coimbatore or Pune or something like that, in the context of the new automobile industry, that clustering has to happen. And if that happens, and only then people will move from, let's say, China or Vietnam or Taiwan over here, because for small things, you can't be running around for importing that and then doing your sub-assembly here. That's what is going to happen. I think that's very important.
Saurabh wants to make a point there. Saurabh Agarwal.
So from an auto industry perspective, I think one of the biggest thing which government should do right away is allowing the deduction from the income tax when a person is buying a car. This is available for the electronic vehicles today, but make it available for diesel and petrol as well. Not just from an auto demand perspective, it's a need of the hour wherein people will prefer to buy their own private conveyances, and we need to support them for the same. This will also ensure that there is money in the hands of the individuals.
Specific. Ramesh,
on the one small point on this demand thing,
right.
Especially in the auto sector, I think the demand thing is going to be completely different from the way we've seen it in the past. But I think there are 2 points, and Vinit, we are looking at, these are non-standard times. So the standard economic revival things are not going to work over here. Let's understand this happened in a very, very non-standard time of this COVID. So therefore, a lot of things happened at this point of time which are immediate, right? The thing about demand, I really don't know. We're talking a lot about demand creation, but in today's time, the main function of demand is sentiment. Because even if you have a whole lot of money in your pocket, if the sentiment is wrong, I'm not going to spend it. So even you're not going to spend it. I'm not going to buy a car if the sentiment is wrong. So in that sense, I feel the government has got it right because it's working on the supply side, touching every sector of the economy so that, there is a survival instinct, which you talked about. And we, kind of tied away this brief period in a nice manner so that the sentiment remains proper. And then we are all entrepreneurs. We will make our own demand happen in the longer run. Because on the demand side, if the sentiment is not there, I don't think demand is going to happen. That's my honest view, honestly.
Ramesh, I was going to ask you, Ramesh and Vani both, you both work with, again, entrepreneurs, industrialists. What can be done to get the sentiment up? What can be done to drive up the demand? What are your specific suggestions?
So, Anurag, I work with so many different sectors, and almost every entrepreneur that I'm working with is telling me that their business is down to about, between 10 and 30% of what it was initially pre-COVID. And pre-COVID, COVID has just suddenly sprung upon us. It's been sprung upon us in the sense that, yes, lockdown was necessary possibly at some time. But the problem is the scare, I think, that has been created is probably of an order that could have been better managed. In the sense that today, it's probably become a bigger disease in our minds than what it should be, is my view. Because right now, the reason, like he said, like Vikram said, demand is about sentiment. Absolutely, it is absolutely about sentiment. And today, the sentiment is that of a lot of doom and gloom. And that's what we are seeing reflected in the business numbers. So when
in the stock markets,
in the stock markets, in everything, people are not going on holidays, people are not taking flights, people don't want to eat out, people don't want to go to movies and restaurants and whatever else. People are not.
They're not allowed. That's closed for now.
Yes, it's closed for now. But
it's not optional.
The point right now is that the number of cases are continuing to increase. And we don't have a choice but to actually open up the economy in a sensible fashion. I'm not in any way suggesting that we should go all out. We have to take the right precautions. But with the right precautions, with some amount of safe distancing, we have to start opening up the economy. We have to get people to learn to live with this disease and hence get demand back. Otherwise, there is no other way. I mean, a lot of startups.
So you're saying social distancing, hygiene, the healthcare system being strengthened. The people have confidence in the healthcare system that even if they get infected, they will be cured and looked after. Ramesh,
exactly.
Ramesh, you, Thomas.
Yeah, I'm just as usual going to be go counter and be a little unpopular. Firstly, let me say I agree with Bani because I think that and therefore that sort of tends to pull down everything and momentum. The second thing I want to say is, government does what it does, and half the time, well, more than half the time, you can't depend upon government to align itself to the things that you want. Because they have a very different set of, let's say, priorities.
And the government has to provide for everyone.
Exactly. So I'm going to come to a point. I mean, I think it's important. It's a stark reality. I'm going to be unpopular for saying this. But before COVID happened, right, you talked about the automobile industry. The only two brands that had a waiting list was Seltos and Hector. Every other brand pre-COVID had huge amount of stock sitting over there. So it wasn't as though it was doing damn well. So are we expecting the government and everyone to save the guys who are not doing well anyway? These two people, I'm absolutely sure, will have a very clear COVID plan and a post-COVID plan if you read carefully, right? So I'm coming back to what I said earlier. It's those who are adaptive, those who are nimble, and those who are customer-facing who are really good to make a difference, and they already have a plan. And as against what I heard, I've got clients who've got very clear plans for survival and are already doing the things required to bring in cash and to invest after the COVID is over.
Okay,
I mean, at this evening, for example, just before this, I was having a chat with one of the worst affected businesses in the world, which is travel, right? There's a clear plan of action, but it depends on whether you're strong enough, whether you have the equity, and whether you have the basis on which you're going to create a revival, sorry, not survival.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Everything.
Vivek, you've been an entrepreneur in pre-COVID times, and now you're a CEO, you sold your company, but you're an investor. Now, when you talk to your portfolio companies who are raising capital, they don't qualify for MSME. How do you think they will survive, Vivek?
So my view, Anurag, is that I think sometimes there is an opportunity in crisis. So,
always.
So I think that especially startups today, they have to now think of winning in the curve. Winning in the curve is that sometimes everything stops. When it stops, so when you on a racetrack, you have to brake hard at a curve and then speed up while you're curving. A lot of startups will have to do the same. Basically, sometimes you could be that you were a startup and the number one guy in the industry had an unassailable lead over you. COVID-19 actually may give you an opportunity to come back at the same time.
Sure.
And then if you can speed up faster and execute better, you can actually overtake him, which would have not been possible earlier. I think the key difference is going to be is that people will have to now think that do they have a plan by which they can create an MVP which completes the cycle. I have 100 rupees to be invested. The 100 rupees becomes 100 rupees back in 3 months, and I get 20 rupees back thereafter every month thereafter. Then if I do that for 1,000 rupees, do it for a lakh of rupees, I'll get a crore rupees and I'll get 100 crore rupees. But if I don't have that MVP completed, I start off with that, okay, no, I'm going to continuously burn capital and not have the cycle completed, then getting capital is going to become extremely difficult. But I think coming back to, I think if you ask me, right, this is maybe a pretty large opportunity for India, because I think the digital transformation that the country needed for a longest period of time was pushed under the envelopes, right? So I have been pitching digital transformation for many years, and all the people that I had talked to the last 5 years, all of them are giving us call back, and we are doing more pitches than ever before. I've had more promoters calling me about digitalizing their company. I'm just doing a talk after this with Wellinger College on their family business management, where they want to talk about digital transformation. The same guys, I've been selling them digital transformation for a decade, and nobody did anything about it. In fact, digital advertising arrived in India because of the 2008 crisis. Because in 2008, people did not have budgets for conventional media. They had to do digital, and they realized that it can give them pretty effective ROI, and they never went back in the same vengeance. Same way, I think digital is the age we're living in. It gives a multiplier across every single facet of an organization. And I think the time has come now to realize a lot of businesses have gone from 100 to 10. If they had collected data of the customers for the last 10 years, they could have actually gone back from 10 to 100 immediately.
Correct.
Now, right now, they're dependent on distributors having that data, dealers having the data. They don't have that data with them, and they don't know what to do. So just the first party data itself, right? Most of the brands don't have first party data of their own customers because somebody else does the selling for them. And having that first party data strategy is going to become extremely critical for them. And now, at least this will accelerate the need and the execution of that strategy. So I'm actually hopeful that this shock that COVID-19 has given to a lot of large brands, they are now going to accelerate the digital strategy, and that will give them a long-term competitive edge in the market. Without this, it would have not got done. So this will
absolutely agree.
Ensure it gets done, and that is great for the country that it gets done.
Fantastic, Vivek. I want to bring Amit and hand over to Vineet. Amit, if you had to make your last comments on what more can be done still. It's not the end of the day. Look at government packages, stage one or installment one. What more can be done specifically?
I think from government point of view, I'm very clear. If they just start paying what is due to people, that's it. And rest the industry needs to take over. We have to stop thinking that what we were doing in Jan, Feb, March, because that is BC era. That's over. Let's understand, like everybody's saying, this is now. This is how we have to. If I'm a startup, can I change the business model because I don't have a legacy? If I'm a legacy, can I change into something else? Like I'm a set-top box company, so I'm going and telling everybody that, as Vineet said, AATMANIRBHAR, it's not going to happen overnight because still the components and electronics is still going to come from China. But at least the trend should start. If in the next 1 year, the component industry is in India, you would be having the whole trend changing. And electronics is something which is a part of every industry today. So whether space and all. So just imagine the amount of scope that electronics in itself have. But the thinking has to be from government point of view is very clear. Just give the money back and talk the bigger story, which is the investments and all that. I think from all of us is how do we survive? Very correct. We'll have collateral damage. We'll have companies who will shut down. Hard luck. I think some will win also, some will grow also. But more importantly is let's cut our losses. Maybe we start again with a new phase. But I also believe that this is the best opportunity India could have ever got. We were lagging from China. We were lagging from the world. I think this is an opportunity for India to come up. Europe, US, everyone is looking for a China plus. If we miss this bus again, then I don't think we're going to get it till another 100 years back. So in the next few years, if India is able to establish itself as a China plus because of our own market and our industry, I think this is the best thing that would have ever happened to India.
Agreed.
I just had one thing to add, Anurag.
Go ahead.
So if I can, I don't think it is India versus China. Even the world needs India, but even China needs an India or China, which was 30 years ago. The cost of capital, the cost of labor, everything has gone up. And I think the biggest transition India needs to make is, in the last 40 years, we've built a services companies, whether it's Infosys, whether it's Cognizant, where 250,000 people have a market cap of $42 billion. Microsoft has 1.5 lakh people, has a market cap of $1,200 billion. So the software companies which are building SaaS companies, whether it's Freshtest or Zoho, all these companies, that level of entrepreneurship that are creating digital brands. The same thing for me, Atmanirbharta is, can we build global brands out of India? Whether we use Chinese components or German components does not
Doesn't
matter.
matter.
We should build Indian brands and we should take them global. That's what I would call Atmanirbharta.
And we definitely have the capacity to, get the apples and the products out of India. Because if you go to those places, I'm sure you'll see only full of Indians only doing that. So I think we have it in us. You're right. It's not about India versus China. What I'm saying is, can we also be that other China, the way the China has grown in the last 20 years? I think this is the next 20 years definitely belongs to us.
All right.
But we'll have to grab it.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to get a closing comment from everyone, and we'll bring in the ones that we have. We should get a closing comment from everyone.
Yeah, just 10 seconds to each one of you. Brevity is the soul of wit. So let's get witty.
Atul Hegde, your final comments on business and economy?
Absolutely, and especially from a government point of view, I think let's not hope for big bang. Let's do the small thing right. Let's do it right every day. Every small step matters. If you're promised to pay in 45 days, do that. If you're promised to open tenders of less than 500 crores for Indian companies, do that. Do everything that you have committed you will do. Do the small things right. We don't want
execute well. Execute well, execute fast, front load execution.
Let's do the small things.
We're going to have to make this quick. We've run out of time. Vivek, 10 seconds for you.
I would say focus on demand generation through advertising, focus on supporting digital product companies that go global, and focus on helping people who are trying to build brands out of India.
Okay, Vikram Lindsay.
Okay, very clearly, a good job, because at the end of the day, demand is what will drive economy. Demand is going to be created by sentiment. Sentiment will create only when the poor have food to eat, the middle class has security in the job, and agriculture has price support and policy is at the top. So I think that's what the government has done. So I think 7 out of 10 at least on my.
All right, Mr. Karbanda.
I think 10 seconds. Tigers have been saved by Mother Nature. Let's save the Indian industry and the economy.
All right, quick word now, Mr. Agarwal. 5 seconds for you.
Adaptability, catching hold of Make in India opportunities, and ensuring that we are at par with other manufacturers in the market. This will create jobs and the consumer demand.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, and then we go to Vani, and lastly, Mr. Baer.
So very quickly from me, I think we need to alleviate the scare. I think the lockdown and the scare is now doing more damage. So we need to move on, and we need to get around to living with Corona and find whatever it takes to live with Corona and get going with life.
Okay, embrace the unembraceable. Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, 3 sentences. 1, those who prepared in good times will not cry in a crisis. Number 2, as a consequence, many are going to fall by the wayside. I don't have a problem with that, as harsh as it may sound. Number 3, the only thing I expect from government is don't get in the way.
All right, failing the plan, planning to fail. Mr. Baer, last comments from you. Mr. Baer? Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Anurag, any more words of wisdom from you?
My thing is, what I've heard over the last 11 days is execute what you announced. Execute it fast, and the Indian entrepreneurs are capable of taking on from there. That's the gist of what I've heard. I think that's where I'd leave it at.
Okay, so that's what they say. A stitch in time saves 9. And on that philosophical note, we'll call it a day. Gentlemen, thank you for being a part of this lovely chat show, and wish you all the health and the good luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.